To whom it may concern, a prisoner sentenced to death plea. To whom it may concern, Marion Bowman Jr., a 44-year-old black man, has spent the last 24 years of his life on death row. His days are numbered as he awaits execution, whether by firing squad, electric chair, or lethal injection. Death will come soon, but before that happens, Bowman has one final plea to make. Not for his life, but for the truth of his story to be heard and understood. This is not just one man's story, but a broader reflection of a broken system. It is a call to advocates, to believers in justice, to those fighting for equity. What purpose does the death penalty ultimately serve? And what does it say about us as a society? Through his story, Bowman lays bare a relentless cycle of poverty, racism, and despair. This is the life he lived and the consequences he now faces. Bowman begins by reflecting on his younger self, a 20-year-old black man living in Branchville, South Carolina. His family was poor and struggling to get by. There were no trust funds or comfortable safety nets to fall back on. He didn't have the privilege of finishing high school. He worked manual, back-breaking, low-paying jobs, but no matter how hard he worked, it was never enough. Desperation grew like weeds, choking out his youthful dreams. Out of options, he turned to selling crack. He doesn't hide it, he knows his choice was wrong. Desperation and survival collided in a moment of weakness, and for him, there seemed to be no other way out. Drugs offered a false promise of stability, a deadly illusion that drove him even deeper into the void. It was Friday, February 16, 2001. By then, Bowman had already settled into a survival rhythm. And then, as quickly as a summer storm coming out of nowhere, it all came crashing down. What exactly happened that day, and in the days leading up to her arrest, becomes less a matter of details and more of its aftermath. Marion Bowman was arrested and charged with capital crimes. Looking back on the moment, his words hurt deeply. The disconcerting experience of seeing your life reduced to a court case, of realizing how quickly your fate was sealed, is a pain that has not diminished after nearly a quarter of a century. Bowman was tried and convicted. A jury sentenced him to death. He does not deny his involvement in a crime, but he does question the scales of justice that imposed the maximum punishment on him. Why the death penalty? Why him? The weight of systemic inequalities weighs heavily on his story. Was it justice or was it the system that worked against him from the start? A young black man with no status, money, or legal knowledge doesn't stand much of a chance. From arrest to conviction, Bowman walked a path paved with the judgments of a flawed process. Yet Bowman does not shy away from his own mistakes. He is painfully aware of the lives that have been affected by his decisions, the families harmed by the poison he peddled, and the pain caused by his actions. He takes responsibility for that. But understanding his mistakes doesn't erase the systemic traps that constrained him. Poverty and oppression narrowed his options as surely as iron bars now restrict his movements. Bowman hopes his story will prompt others to see that personal responsibility and systemic inequity are deeply intertwined. Bowman invites us to go beyond our individual choices. Imagine that we grew up constantly hungry, watching our family struggle for every dollar we earned. Imagine that we need more education, better opportunities, or any way to escape the cruel clutches of poverty and we can't find it. Systemic poverty is not an excuse, it's an explanation. It's a breeding ground for desperation and bad decisions. Bowman didn't stumble into these circumstances by accident. He was born into the kind of economic desperation that forces people to make choices that wealthier communities may never have to consider. Another piece of the puzzle is education. Bowman dropped out of high school, like many young people in cash-strapped communities. With few paths to stability and growth, he entered adulthood already at a disadvantage. Without education, he lacked the tools to imagine a future beyond survival, let alone one with legal opportunities for income or upward mobility. Bowman's reflection raises a vital question: how many people are left behind before they have the chance to thrive? And why do we punish them so harshly for consequences we collectively could not prevent? Poverty, lack of education, and systemic inequality all feed into a vicious cycle. Communities most affected by deprivation are often the ones who receive punishment, not support. Bowman's life is a tragic example of this revolving door between poverty, crime, and incarceration. If we truly want to break this cycle, we must attack its roots, not its symptoms. Bowman's story challenges us to rethink who we criminalize and what it means for justice when punishment outweighs the hope of rehabilitation. Bowman's story takes on even more weight when one considers the role of race. As a black man, his encounter with the justice system was tainted by racial bias. The alarming disparities in sentencing of black and white defendants reveal an uncomfortable truth: race often determines outcomes in American courts. The death penalty, in particular, bears the stain of this prejudice. Bowman invites us to ask whether his sentence is about justice or power. Is his life worth less because of the color of his skin? For the past 24 years, Bowman has lived under the shadow of death. Each passing day is a reminder of the fate that awaits him. He sits in a small cell, reflecting on time lost and mistakes made. Regret haunts him, but so does the longing for redemption. If history could be rewritten, Bowman would have followed a different path, one that systemic failures snatched away from him before he had a chance to find it on his own. It's not just about the choices he made, but also the opportunities he never had. The specter of Bowman's execution raises a profound ethical question: what purpose does the death penalty serve? Does it serve justice, or is it an act of vengeance? Does it deter crime, or is it another tool of systemic oppression? The answer to these questions will vary depending on your perspective, but Bowman's story makes one thing clear: there are no winners. Neither crime victims nor the convicted find redemption in state-sanctioned death. Despite his mistakes, Bowman's story highlights the critical need to humanize those facing capital punishment. They are more than the crimes they committed. They are products of their environments, products of a society that failed to protect them or help them in their most vulnerable moments. Bowman's plea goes beyond his own life. He asks that all those on death row be seen, heard, and recognized as human beings. Public empathy has the potential to spark a shift in how we approach justice. Bowman's story shows that empathy can challenge the narrative that prisoners are beyond redemption and can urge society to focus on systemic solutions rather than final punishments. Bowman isn't begging for his own life, he's begging us to imagine a world where stories like his aren't repeated. A world where no one is considered irredeemable. Bowman leaves us with vital questions: what do we expect from justice? Is it retribution or the creation of a more just society? Is the death penalty a solution or a symptom of deeper problems? What does it say about us if we seek only to punish and never to remedy? These questions demand introspection, not only from the government but from each of us who claim to stand for justice and equity. I am Marion Bowman Jr., and this is my story. I am not asking you to forgive my mistakes. I have made peace with my past. What I am asking is that my story opens your hearts and minds. Not to me, but to the next 20-year-old boy, caught in circumstances he did not create and decisions he did not foresee. As Bowman's time runs out, her words resonate beyond the walls of her cell. Will we, as advocates for justice, continue to carry her story forward? Will we use it to demand a justice system that heals rather than destroys? Marion Bowman may not escape death row, but her story doesn't have to die there. Justice does not consist in taking lives, but in saving them. Let us not forget that.